you put in these frames. The bees build wax. Oh, here, if you want to see when they store honey, this is what honeycomb looks like with honey in it versus larvae. And I also brought you the bees. This is what they look like.
Kim? Oh, I have a bees.
And I figured that might be really easy to look at like and so, because you have so many bees in a hive, it's very organized. You start out with your 3,000 bees, which is maybe 10,000, 15,000 bees. The queen will lay eggs. She will lay eggs all day. A queen bee only leaves the hive 2 to 3 times in her life. So a queen bee flies out in order to mate. Remember those drone congregation areas, those like sports bars for bees? She will go there, she will mate. She'll do that a couple of times, and then she will come back to the hive, and she will take another day for her body to fully mature, and then she can start laying eggs. And the workers are the ones that take care of everything in the hive. They take care of the queen. If you see a queen in a hive, she's always surrounded by worker bees. They are cleaning her, they're feeding her. She doesn't do any of that herself. She's really unable to do it. If you take a queen bee away and you don't give her any attendance, she will die because she doesn't have the capability. Yes?
When she first mates with the people, the bees,
the drones, yeah.
Does she just get enough sperm to last her whole life?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what, and she mates with 10 to 15, and she has this organ called the spermatheca where she stores it. And queen bees can, I've had queen bees be able to be functioning for as long as three years. And then the bees, again, the thing that regulates a lot of things that happen in the hive are pheromones. And pheromones are hormones?
Pheromones are hormones travel within an organism. Pheromones travel between organisms, but they have the same basic effect.
So pheromones regulate the life in the hive. The queen bee gives off these really powerful pheromones that do various things. They keep everyone happy. They keep the worker ovaries suppressed. They just did.
What happens if they're not suppressed?
Then, so if the queen were to disappear, so let's say I check my hive and I squish my queen, and somehow the bees the bees have the ability to make a new queen, but let's assume somehow they don't make a new queen, and these pheromones are gone, and the pheromones that come off the brood, everything of the larvae, everything in the hive gives off pheromones. And let's say all that is gone, and some workers will actually start, their ovaries will start to develop, but they don't have the ability to mate. So remember in the very beginning we said about the haploids? So these workers, even if their ovaries fire up and they start to become functioning, they can't mate, so they only have these unfertilized 1X chromosome eggs, and so they can only raise drones. It's kind of the colony's last ditch effort, because if the queen is lost and they didn't succeed in making a new queen, they are going down, they're going to die. But by having some of the workers start laying eggs and raising them as drones, these drones will fly out and go to, again, said drone congregation / sports bar areas and hopefully find a virgin queen to get their genetic material out there. So even this colony might be doomed. Some of these drones will hopefully be able to pass on the genetic material. Yes?
Wasn't there problems a few years ago when bees went extinct?
They've been having issues. There is a mite, it's called the varroa mite, that used to only be a parasite in certain Asiatic bees, but it in the 90s or late 80s maybe, it started to infect honeybees, and it spread all over the world. And it's basically like a big flea for honeybees, and just like fleas did in the olden days, it transmits diseases, and that's what's been hurting honeybees. So a lot of what beekeepers are talking about nowadays is how to control varroa mites. If we had varroa mites, they're not little fleas, varroa mites on us would be this big. So there are these mites, they look like tiny little crabs, and they suck, I mean, they weaken the bees by sucking their bodily fluids, but also by giving them viruses and causing diseases, and that's what's been ailing the honeybees. And so even as as someone who treats for varroa mites, most beekeepers lose a few hives every year, and there was that, they called it colony collapse disorder at the time, where some like commercial beekeepers would lose 50 or more % of their bees every year, and that was really, that's why there was this big panic. It seems to have settled a little bit. I mean, varroa mites are here, and we're trying to treat for them with various acids, because the acids in the correct amounts don't seem to hurt the honeybee, but they kill the varroa mite off the honeybee. Yes?
So there are 2 queens, is one get killed?
Yes. Most, yes. Sometimes in the late season, you will get the hive will make a second queen, and it'll be like this mother-daughter team that will kind of tag team, but usually the old queen will just eventually die, I mean, or disappear. Who knows what happens?
Won't they swarm? Is that one of them?
Well, yes, they do have to make a second queen also in order to swarm. So let's say you've gotten your hive, it's built up last year and it's made it through the winter. This time of year, you might hear people mention bee swarms. You have this huge cloud of bees that settles somewhere, and it looks like this ball of bees. I'll show you a swarm. This is what a swarm of bees looks like. And they will just hang in. That's bees procreating. So when your hive is getting big, maybe it's made up of 4 boxes, and they have tons of bees. I mean, there's probably 50,000 bees in that hive, and they have some honey, and there's some young bees developing, and things are getting crowded, and the bees are like, okay, let's procreate. So they will decide to make a new queen. And remember how in that frame that I showed you, there are spaces to raise drones and spaces to raise workers. When they want to raise a new queen, they need even a bigger space. So this is what a queen cell looks like. So they make these, they decide to build some queen cells, and the queen lays an egg in there, and then that larvae in there is fed only royal jelly. And when before this gets closed up, while they're feeding it, when you look in there, it looks like Noxema in there, like a blob of Noxema. That's the royal jelly, because they just engulf this larvae, this queen larvae, in royal jelly, so it can just gorge itself all day long on the royal jelly. And then they close, they call it capping, they close the queen cell up. And remember that other slide, how the development is very set? A queen takes 16 days. So at day 8 or 9, they close the queen cell up, and at about day 12 to 14 or so, the old queen will say, okay, it's time. I have things set up, for after I'm gone, and somehow about half the bees in the hive will know that it's time to go, and the old queen will fly away, and they will become a swarm, and they will go fly and rest somewhere like this. And somewhere in this ball, there is our queen bee surrounded by tens of thousands of worker bees. And this is just kind of an intermediate stage. From here, they send out scout bees. And the scout bees look for an empty hive, or for a hollow tree, or for a hole in your siding, or for your chimney. And they will go in and they will check it out, and they actually take measurements. There is a professor at Cornell University, his name is Thomas Seeley, and he's done in upstate New York, in like these unpopulated forested areas, he's put out these various boxes, and he's had his hive swarming, and he's, then he has grad students that sit there and put little color dots on bees to see where they come back and what they do. And he's figured out that they go in and they look and they kind of take measurements, and then they come back to the swarm, and they do a little dance on top of on top of these other bees, because bees communicate through pheromones and also through dancing. And they can tell their fellow swarm buddies how big the cavity is that they found, which way the opening faces, and then they kind of try to to recruit fans, and they get some other bees to go with them to check it out, and then those bees come back and they become influencers. And they try to tell everyone how cool this place is that they found. And if one group of bees succeeds in convincing the swarm that they found the perfect home, the whole swarm will take off, and these scout bees will lead everyone, including the queen, to this new home, and they will go in and set up house. And that's a new colony. In the old colony, we have that queen cell that'll hatch, and then we have what's called a virgin queen, and she will take a day or two to, for her exoskeleton to harden, for her body to mature, and then she'll go to those drone congregation areas, to those sports bars where those young strapping drones are hanging out, and she'll mate with about 10-15 of them, and the drones will die after they mate with her, but the queen will go back to her hive, and her body will again take a few days to mature, and she'll have all this sperm in her spermatheca, in this special organ she has, and she will then start laying eggs, and the whole thing will start over. And when we have these big, we have these big hillsides of blackberries in our area, that's when the bees really make honey. Then, because you have these like 3-4 boxes. There's maybe 1 or 2 boxes that the queen uses to lay eggs and raise brood, but one of them, the bees will take these frames like I passed through, and they will start storing nectar in it, because they will need the nectar to live through the winter. That's what they live off of. And that's why the bee colony can overwinter, because they plan ahead and they make honey to get them through the winter. Yes?
How long does it take a swarm to actually find a place to breed?
It varies. It can take, I've been called, that's when there's like swarm lists where beekeepers are on lists to get called. And I've arrived and I'm chatting with the person who called me, and off they go, never to be seen again. And then other people have called me and they're like, yeah, I've had this ball of bees hanging in my tree for 3 days. And sometimes they don't figure it out. Like this was a swarm that had been hanging in a tree for several days. And when I removed it and I cut the little branch and I finally got to the center of it, the bees had actually started to grow to build honeycomb on that branch, because when they leave the hive, they gorge themselves with honey, and their bodies are primed to set up home in a new location. And if they don't find that location, then they just are like, just gotta go, just gotta get going, and they just on the spot start building, and that's kind of a doomed, that would be a doomed setup, because then once they have the eggs and the brood there, they wouldn't want to move. So then, as it gets colder, they would die. But it can be minutes to hours to days until they find their place. It's very unpredictable. So I've learned to not chat with the person who called me to do my thing and then chat. Yes?
So you said the only thing that differentiates the workers and the queen bee is the food that they get from their babies?
Yep, that's the only thing, yep. It's the same, it starts out with the same egg. And also see how the queen, they call it a cell, the queen cell is directed downwards. That's the other thing. Queen cells are always hanging down, whereas these are all worker cells here. They are horizontal. The queen cell will always hang vertical. And that's when people breed queens, that you can take any worker egg and you can put it in a special cup that hangs down, and you put it in a hive that doesn't have a queen, and it will stimulate the bees to raise queens. And again, back to the royal jelly, people that produce royal jelly, they just have hives that are set up to just endlessly make these queen cells to produce tons of royal jelly. Yeah, so that's how the beehive can proliferate. And in the spring, rather than have my bees swarm, I can also split a hive. I can kind of give them the feeling they've swarmed. I take the old queen with about half the bees in the hive, I put her in a new location, and the old hive, as long as I make sure there's some eggs in there, the bees can make these queen cells on their own, and they can make a new queen, and then I have 2 hives, and hopefully I won't lose half of my hive to swarming, because I can't always, if they fly half a mile away, I might never know that they've swarmed, and I might not find out about it. as a beekeeper. And also, because they might set up shop in someone's wall or chimney, I try to be a responsible urban beekeeper and kind of get ahead of the bees. Any other questions? Yes.
In what ratio are worker bees to drone bees made? Is it like a 1 to 10?
Oh my gosh.
1 to 50?
You know, this time of year, there are probably, in some hives, there might be there are 2,000 drones in a hive. That's a lot. So if you have, let's say you have 30,000 bees, 40,000 bees, and 1,000 or so drones. Yeah, that's about, yeah. So it's not very much. And a lot of, because I give my bees some frames that are like this, they will sometimes make a whole frame just for drones. And a lot of commercial beekeepers don't like to have a lot of drones in their hives because, again, remember, they don't work, they just eat. And if you're all about honey production and maximizing that, then you don't want drones. But I think, you know, if it keeps them happy, then I let them do their thing. Again, I'm just a hobby beekeeper, I'm not. Oh, and I have, there's actually a queen bee and a dead queen bee and a dead worker bee in here. You can see the size comparison. They're a little worse for wear, but there's not yet. And then if you want to come by, there's some brood here. So there's some baby bees in the making in these dark capped cells here. And down here you can see the liquid. That's the nectar that's being made into honey. And over here where it's capped, it's kind of like a jar on a canning jar. When the bees cap the honey, it keeps through the winter. Actually, honey is one of the foods that keeps indefinitely. They found honey even in Egyptian tombs that's still just fine. It crystallizes and turns firm, but it doesn't go bad because of the high sugar content. Bacteria cannot grow on in it, so it doesn't have to be preserved in any way. You put in a jar for the there.
So you said when the queen bee dies, that the worker bees can then go into one of the larvae and give it the jelly.
Yeah.
And
If it's
that
in the larvae, it cannot be older than 3 days. Remember, for the first 3 days, everyone gets the raw jelly. So as long as they have a larvae that's 3 days or younger, they can just make sure its diet stays royal jelly, and they can raise them. And they usually, so you can see here, these cells were all, you know, built for workers, so they just kind of do a little bit of remodeling to accommodate that bigger cell for a queen. They just chew the wax away and just make it fit because the queen cell is so much bigger.
So what was the case where they couldn't produce the
Yes,
queen?
if something happens and they space it, they don't, about a 3-day window passes, then because of the pheromone absence, the queen is not there anymore to put out this pheromone to suppress the workers' ovaries. Some of the workers will develop ovaries that can then produce eggs, but they've never made it, so they're just unfertilized egg. And an unfertilized egg is what makes a drone. And so then that hive will just raise some drones just to get its genetic material out there as a last-ditch effort before it goes down. Because the workers, again, they live 6 to 8 weeks, and then the hive will be perished. They'll just dwindle away. It just dwindles away as the bees die. And the bees keep their hive very clean. Bees don't go to the bathroom in the hive. They always fly out, and even in the winter, you know, we can have freezing temperatures. We get a sunny day, and the bees will fly out, and some of our cars are parked right by the beehive, and you can tell when we have a sunny day in the winter because there'll be these little splotches of yellow bee poop over the dark blue car, and you can tell that the bees went on a cleansing flight. And also when bees die, most of them try to die outside the hive. They just work themselves to death, and eventually just don't come back one day. And if they die in the hive, their sisters will take them and carry them and then just drop them and fly home. Very tiny. Yeah, any other questions?
Melissa, do you have a question?
Well, the other hives, how long does a honeybee hive typically live, or does it just keep separating?
It's kind of like an amoeba. It just keeps, And like I said, the longest I've had a queen bee is 3 years, so I would just take, you know, her and move her, and then a daughter hive is produced, and sometimes depending on the size of the hive, sometimes I'll do that once a year, sometimes I can even do it twice a year, just depending how vigorous the hive is. And a hive can, a big healthy hive can produce 50 to 100 pounds of honey a year. Because evolution has, you know, made, you know, we've had winters that were really, really hard, and only the beehives that had a tendency to kind of over prepare survived, and so then that trait in the bees to make a lot of honey, to put a lot of resources away, is the one that survived, so then those bees prospered. So bees really kind of overdo it. I mean, they put a lot more honey away than they need. In our area, they do need about 50 pounds of honey to make it through the winter, but anything, most hives make more like 70 plus pounds of honey, so a hive can give you like 20 pounds of honey. So yeah.
We'll take about a 10-minute break if you want to come down and take a look at these.